Alrighty, folks. Thanks for tuning in for another Cruise with Smooth. Hope y'all are doing okay today. I'm not going to talk about anything political today. Frankly, I've had my share of all the political talk. The discourse on Facebook is getting somewhere between obnoxious and insane. The discourse in the news is frankly no better. So I'm going to talk about something different. Before I share what's on my mind today, one of the other reasons that I started doing this show, about a year before I picked it up, I started doing a voice journal app on my phone, and it was just a way to, kind of get the day's burdens off my chest and things like that, and just kind of make a permanent record of stuff like that. But I got thinking, if any of this could potentially help anybody or give anybody insight into what's going on in their mind, why not? And all, with like two exceptions, all the videos that I've done have been videos that I've recorded in my commute time, and so it's not costing me any time to do it. So why not? So it helps me kind of unwind a little bit at times. Other times it gets me torqued out, but overall it helps me unwind a bit. And if it helps anybody or gives a different perspective to anybody, all the better. So anyway, one of the things I want to talk about, within the past couple months, I've had to do just some regular maintenance type stuff on a couple of vehicles. The oil change in this car, it's funny, the guy that I bought it from, he sold it to me with a full tank of gas, but the oil change was doing like 200 miles. So right after I bought it, I changed the oil in it. And my old truck, it was getting close to being due. I don't put any miles on it at all by comparison to my other vehicles. It's just too thirsty. But it was getting time to change the oil, so change the oil in it and my mower. Now, I don't know if y'all know this, but that old work truck of mine used to be my dad's. The short version of the story is I have always cut grass on the side since I got steady 9-to-5 employment. Moth got in here. And I had a truck that I loved, but it had gotten totaled, and Dad wasn't using his truck, so he let me borrow it. And then when I got the money, I had mentioned it to him once or twice. No, I ain't got some old truck. And then I mentioned it to him once or twice. He's like, I've never missed it, and I can always come get it. So give me this much and it's yours. So I did. Well, anyway, fast forward, and I get under that truck over the weekend, and I'm changing oil and filter, and got hit with a moment of nostalgia, and man, I miss my dad. I bought it from him I think the year before he passed. No, the year that he did pass. I bought it from him and took title possession of it in April or May, and he was gone in December, so less than a year. And one of the more interesting things that ever happened in that old truck, I had a similar smaller vehicle, SUV. Oddly enough, one of my favorite vehicles. If it would have been four-wheel drive, I probably would have never gotten rid of it. Two-wheel drive Expedition, an older one, first generation. And it spun a rod bearing. I didn't really want to go through the motor, so I found the cheapest pull-out motor out of a truck like that I could get my hands on. And the way that it worked out, even though it was cheap, it was quite a ways away, but even when you figured lodging and everything, to get this motor with the kind of mileage that it had on it, I was still coming out ahead, even if you figured gas, food, lodging. So anyway, it was a 7-hour drive away from us, according to Google, and we weren't making any serious time. I think the fastest that we got going in any sustained manner was about 5 or 6 over. There was once on the Atlanta bypass that we had to kind of get a move on just to keep up with traffic, but we weren't, doing anything crazy. So Dad and I decided, well, here, I think, nope. So I had been in contact with the seller of this engine, and we get all the details worked out, and Dad and I decided we're going to drive down to Atlanta, well, east of Atlanta, about an hour, to go pick up this engine. I was working night shift at the time, and we get going down there, and I think I slept 2 or 3 hours initially due to my shift, but we get going down there and we're doing okay. And he and I, it was just a fantastic time that he and I got to spend together. Whole day in the truck, cutting up, making fun of the pollen. It was funny, we drove past a bunch of used car lots, and the pollen on the hood, windshields, and roofs of these cars was so thick that it changed the color of the paint. And I hadn't seen that before, but apparently it's fairly normal around the Atlanta area. Well, at one point, I'm driving, and the road that we're on, I want to say it was a 275 bypass. Now, don't hold me to that, but every couple miles or so, a couple lanes will fork off to the right or fork off to the left. So I'm like, well, I don't really want to get caught in that. So, and it was the first trip that he and I had ever taken on GPS, so this was a number of years back. But I'm like, I don't want to get out of the route and tick off my GPS too bad. So I'm just kind of hanging right in the middle lane or two, because I'm figuring, okay, right here I'm safe. Well, sure enough, the lane I'm in peels off and it goes way out in the direction that we don't need it to go. So I flip on my turn signal to get over. And in the Atlanta metro area at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, turn signals mean nothing. So I'm driving with my turn signal on. No one's letting me over, and I told Dad, I looked over at him. I'm driving, and I'm like, I'm not making a wrong turn here. He's like, you do whatever you gotta do, just don't wreck my truck. Okay. Well, there's something that was interesting down there, is there was a lip about yay big to go into the emergency lane on that specific bypass back then. And we hit it, going about 65, 70 miles an hour. The whole truck, it hit it all 4 tires at different times. And we're driving along in the emergency lane trying to get over. And I look over at Dad, I say, I'm about to get a little serious here. And so I went from politely asking to get over to wide open throttle in the emergency lane coming over now. And I got over. The big reason I was in a hurry is I didn't want to hit a gator, or where the semi-tires throw off their recaps. I didn't want to hit one of those or any other debris, or worse, come up on a disabled vehicle. So I got over real quick. Well, we continue on our little drive, and we're going down this little straight as a pin 2-lane blacktop outside of Atlanta by a little bit. And off to the side, just a little bit, there's these 2 ruts worn through all the grass into the dirt, where 4-wheelers and side-by-sides were a thing, but they were more of a work thing back then. Like, I think the very first Razors had just come out right around that time. But where they were running right next to the road, commuting back and forth through this rural residential area, they had worn their own little road down. He and I commented on it, and you're out in Redneckville when. Okay, yeah, kind of funny. And I looked over at him. He goes, I know you're gonna. And I put the truck right in those ruts that had been worn down, and we're kind of, bouncing along and doing the speed limit on this dirt path that ran right next to the road by about, I think there was about 3 or 4 feet between the closest rut and this 2-lane that we were on. And we're just tooling along at 55, and I'm chuckling, he's chuckling. And I said, what'd make this really fun? He goes, what? I said, if Mom were here, he's like, I was thinking the exact same thing. My mom, I love her to pieces, but as soon as you do anything in a car that is outside the textbook of the driver's instruction manual, she starts losing it. So we get down to this guy's house, and I look over the engine to make sure it's what he advertised it as on the website that I dealt with. Get him paid. Get everything situated, and load the motor up in the truck, and we haul back. I told him, I said, I have the money to stop somewhere if we need to, but once I get within about 200 miles, I'm probably going to go to the house. I'm probably going to go on home because I want to sleep in my own bed, and you can sleep in the passenger seat and do whatever you need to do, but once we get close, we're probably going home. But we just had such a good time. We laughed, we cut up, we ate out, most of the time we'll spend in the truck. I think we got out of the truck, aside from fuel and and getting the motor, I think we got out twice. I think we got out and got breakfast somewhere, and we had snacks in the truck, and then we stopped and got a good dinner. Other than that, we were rolling. We made it, we pulled down about 14 hours of driving in a day between the two of us. I know that's not a huge, record amount, but we did okay. And we just had such a good time hanging out with each other and talking and carrying on. boy, what I wouldn't give to do that again. But I think this goes back to one of the videos I did earlier about, posting old family stories to kind of immortalize them in a way. Because my dad can tell me a story, I can tell my kids a story, but eventually it's either going to get so wrong and twisted or just forgotten, and it won't be around no more. And for some reason, that just bothers me a little. So, putting them up here on YouTube, they'll be around possibly a lot longer than I am, unless the apocalypse happens. So, kind of what was on my mind today. I got under that truck and got wrenching a little bit, just doing maintenance, and boy, I miss him. And I got thinking about that time we took that old truck down to Dewey Rose, Georgia, and had that great day together. Something else he used to do, the job he worked when I was a kid, he was a traveling salesman. And when I was a kid, there were times that about once or twice a year, he'd set up he'd be on the phone constantly, and he'd set up a sales route for the day of, all the places he has to go, people he has to talk to, things like that. And he'd set up a route that was, we'll call it kid appropriate. And I don't mean he did anything, bad or anything, but there were places that he dealt with that you wouldn't want to take an 8 or 9 year old kid into. He went into morgues, he went into the preparation area of funeral homes, he went into some of the medical student areas at teaching hospitals where they have preserved cadavers in various sections and cutouts and whatnot to demonstrate to medical students. So, just places you don't want to take your kid. But he took me out to work several times when I was a kid. We'd go meet customers, and I remember Mom used to think it was just the cutest thing because he'd have me dressed up in a matching suit to match him, and we'd go out in his car and ride around all day doing sales calls. And I just remember that very vividly from when I was a kid. And it was a lot of fun hanging out with him. Another memory that I've got, and after this one I gotta go, one time he punked me for my 16th birthday. And first off, I've been a car nut since I could say car. And so I was super excited to turn 16, get my permit, start driving, excited for my first vehicle, things like that. Well, anyway, Dad made my 16th birthday a rather big birthday, and I don't know if it was that he couldn't afford it or just things came up when they came up or things happened when they happened. But my birthday kind of happened the whole month prior, or the whole 30 days prior up to my birthday. One of the things that I wanted for my birthday, because I knew I wasn't going to be driving by myself, I wanted a 5-string bass guitar. I'd taken up bass at about 13 or 14. I'd already had a ton of music theory at that point, so it was learning how to go from piano to bass guitar. I'd gotten reasonably decent in the time I'd been playing, and when I was getting close to 16, he's like, would you like a bass guitar of your own? Yeah. So we get looking around guitars, and my big thing is I wanted a light one because I wanted to be able to play for a long time without it wearing on my back. So we're looking online, and we've been looking for a couple months at this point, and this is a few days before my birthday. I'm literally sitting in front of the computer looking up different brands, designs on that are for sale on used sites. I don't think Reverb was around at this point, but I'm looking at eBay auctions on guitars that have interested me. Well, anyway, he has me going to the kitchen, the other room, for something. And then I turn around, I'm facing the counter, getting something done, and he taps me on the shoulder with the headstock of my birthday present. So, and he played it off like I had no clue that he had planned that. And so I, thank him, hug him, snatch it out of his hands, and proceed to go play it. And I'd never played a 5-string up to that point, so I was very excited. But he also got me a bass guitar amp that year it served me very well up until just recently when the amp crapped out. The speaker's still fine, the amp shorts out and you get nothing for about 10-15 seconds and it comes back to life, but I am not an electrician. So I still have it, I just hadn't decided what I'm going to do with it. And then the other thing, one of the trips that we took, we actually did an overnight business trip. It was one of those things that wasn't real far away, but just far enough that you can't justify that kind of drive round trip in a day plus do business. You'll just get in too late. So he and I went out of town to a place that he did business. I think it was 5 hours round trip, and we did some business, made some calls, and he took me to this little restaurant. He used to live in this town briefly. This little restaurant's been there since the late 20s, I think. Farrell's Express is the place. There's just a handful of locations. Imagine Steak and Shake if you shrunk it in the dryer. That's Farrell's. But only like the bar area where you're sitting there watching them cook your food. Well, when I turned 16, I went and took my permit test, and we played hooky from everything that day, and we road tripped out to Farrell's for burgers and chili. And that was just one of the coolest birthday presents ever. Road tripping on day 1 of my permit. So, anyway, I miss him dearly, but I sure do enjoy those old memories of the things that we got to do together. I hope y'all enjoy hearing the stories of some of this stuff. Anyway, I reckon that's all I got. I'm almost where I'm going. Y'all be safe. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.